The shelter bell jingled faintly as 10-year-old Sophia rolled her wheelchair through the front door, her mother just behind her. Her eyes, soft but determined, scanned the long hallway of kennels, each one filled with barking, tail-wagging dogs desperate for affection. Volunteers smiled, steering her toward the friendly ones. A golden retriever licked her fingers, a beagle wagged so hard he nearly fell over. But Sophia's gaze kept drifting, toward the shadowed corner, toward the cage no one approached. "That's Titan's kennel," a staff member said, quickly trying to block her view. "We don't bring visitors near him. He's dangerous." But Sophia shook her head gently. "I want to see him." A hush fell over the room. Titan had been there the longest. A hulking German shepherd with fire in his eyes and fear in his bones. No one touched him. No one dared. Sophia's mother hesitated. "Sweetheart, please." "I need to meet him," Sophia whispered. Reluctantly, the staff stepped aside. As her wheelchair creaked slowly toward the cage, a deep, chilling growl rolled from the shadows. Volunteers held their breath. No one knew it yet, but this wasn't the beginning of a tragedy. It was the start of a miracle. Titan's growl echoed off the concrete walls like distant thunder. His massive frame stood rigid in the dim light, muscles taut beneath a scarred coat. His amber eyes narrowed, following every movement of the wheelchair wheels as they crept closer. To him, everything was a threat, especially kindness. "Step back," one volunteer whispered urgently. But Sophia didn't flinch. Titan was the shelter's ghost story, spoken about in hushed voices. Found wandering the outskirts of town, emaciated and caked in filth, a frayed rope still hanging from his neck, he'd arrived a growling wounded thing. Since then, he'd known only fear and solitude. Most days he didn't eat unless no one was watching. He never barked with joy, only snarled with warning. He never wagged his tail. His world was a cage, and he had accepted it. Until Sophia. She rolled within feet of the bars, her hands folded calmly in her lap. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice steady, but soft. "I know how it feels." Titan's growl faltered. For the first time, the unapproachable dog didn't lunge or bare his teeth. He just stared. And somewhere beneath all the pain, something flickered in his eyes of recognition. The shelter went silent. Something was happening. Something no one could explain. The tension in the room was suffocating. Titan's ears flicked. His body still bristled with caution, but the rage in his growl had faded to something else: confusion, hesitation. Sophia remained still, her gaze locked onto his. No fear, just empathy. "Hi," she said softly as if greeting an old friend. "My name's Sophia." The big shepherd didn't move, but his eyes followed her every word. "I know you don't want me here," she continued. "I didn't want to be here either, in this chair. After the accident, I thought I'd never feel happy again." Titan's breathing slowed. The rigid tension in his shoulders seemed to loosen just slightly. "I know what it's like to feel broken," she whispered. "To feel like no one understands." From the corner, a volunteer bit her lip, eyes glistening. No one had ever gotten this close to him. No one had dared. Sophia took a deep breath. Slowly, carefully, she reached out. Titan flinched, pulling back a few inches. Her hand froze midair. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said barely above a whisper. Seconds passed, long, aching seconds. Then, with a deep, uncertain sigh, Titan stepped forward just once. His nose brushed the tips of her fingers. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. And then he didn't bite. He didn't growl. He leaned in. The massive broken dog rested his scarred head gently in her outstretched hand. And the entire room collapsed into tears. The moment Titan's head touched Sophia's hand, it was as if the world stood still. No one moved. No one dared breathe. The dog, who had snarled and snapped at every kind gesture for months, was now trembling not with rage, but with surrender. His heavy head rested in her palm, his eyes fluttering closed, like someone finally allowing themselves to sleep. Sophia's hand shook as she gently stroked the side of his face. She could feel the rough scars beneath the fur. He flinched at first, but didn't pull away. Behind her, volunteers gasped quietly, some pressing their hands to their mouths in disbelief. A caretaker, the same one who had avoided Titan's cage for weeks, wiped silent tears from her cheek. "I'm not afraid of you," Sophia whispered, her fingers brushing his ear. "I know you're not mean, you're just hurt." Titan let out a low sound, a groan, or maybe a sigh. Either way, it was the first noise he'd ever made that wasn't meant to scare. Sophia smiled, tears rising in her eyes. "You've been waiting, haven't you? For someone who wouldn't give up on you." Her mother knelt beside her, stunned. "Sophia?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "How?" The little girl shook her head, eyes still locked on Titan. "I don't know. I just felt him. And somehow, so did everyone else in the room." Titan slowly leaned farther into Sophia's lap, his body quivering with a strange mixture of fear and trust. His massive frame curled around her chair like a living shield. The aggressive label on his kennel door suddenly felt like a lie. This wasn't a monster. This was a heartbroken soul who had finally found someone who saw through the pain. Sophia lowered her cheek to his head, her voice barely audible. "You're not alone anymore." At that moment, something unspoken passed between them two broken spirits, both changed by a single moment of trust. And in that quiet shelter, a miracle bloomed. By the time Sophia's hand slid gently down Titan's thick neck, the entire shelter had gathered silently behind her. Volunteers, caretakers, and even the director stood frozen, witnessing something no one had ever dreamed possible. Titan, the unadoptable dog, the one they all feared, was now curled at the feet of a fragile little girl in a pink-rimmed wheelchair, his breathing calm, his body still. One of the volunteers, shaking her head in disbelief, whispered, "He's never let anyone get this close. Never." Sophia's mother crouched beside her, tears streaking her face. "Sweetheart, do you want to bring him home?" Sophia looked down at the massive head in her lap. "He's already home," she whispered. The shelter director stepped forward, her voice cautious. "Sophia, Titan is on the restricted list. He was scheduled for behavioral evaluation next week." Everyone knew what that meant. One more sign of aggression, and he'd be gone. But now watching him melt into Sophia's embrace like a lost child, finally found no one could find the heart to say no. The director glanced around the room. Every pair of eyes begged her not to ruin this. She took a deep breath. Then, "Let's start the paperwork." A gasp rippled through the room. Titan stirred at the sound, lifting his head slightly. Sophia ran her fingers along his ears and smiled. "You waited for someone to believe in you," she said softly. "I'm so glad it was me." In that moment, every scar on his body seemed to fade, not disappear, but no longer define him. He wasn't the shelter's problem anymore. He was Sophia's protector. And for the first time in his life, Titan had a name that meant family. Weeks later, Titan walked proudly beside Sophia's wheelchair down the quiet streets of their neighborhood. His once matted fur now glistened under the sun, and his steps were steady perfectly in rhythm with her wheels. Neighbors paused in awe as the unlikely pair passed. The terrifying dog they once heard stories about now wore a bright red vest that read, "Therapy in Training." His amber eyes calm and alert, never leaving Sophia's side. At the park, children ran up to greet her. Some were nervous around Titan at first, until they saw how he sat quietly beside her, only wagging his tail when Sophia gave him the okay. Sophia looked down at him, her fingers brushing his thick neck. "You're not just my dog," she whispered. "You're my strength." Back at home, Titan would curl up beside her bed every night, his ears twitching at every sound. He didn't growl anymore. He didn't pace. He had found peace. And Sophia. Her laughter had returned, her light. She still had hard days, but she never faced them alone again. One broken dog, one brave girl. Together they had rewritten each other's story, not through grand gestures, but through quiet understanding and gentle love. Titan didn't just find a home, he found his person. And Sophia found a friend who understood the pain behind her smile. Two souls once discarded, now inseparable. Proof that sometimes the most damaged hearts create the most unbreakable bonds. The story of Sophia and Titan reminds us that true healing often begins when someone dares to look beyond fear labels or scars and simply sees us. Titan was feared, misunderstood, and all but written off as dangerous. Sophia, a young girl in a wheelchair, carried her own invisible wounds, grief, loneliness, and the quiet ache of being different. Yet when they met, something extraordinary happened. They recognized each other's pain, and in that recognition, something softened. This story teaches us that even the most broken spirits are capable of transformation when met with patience, empathy, and love. It's easy to give up on people or animals when they lash out or shut down. But what if, like Titan, they're not angry, just afraid? What if, like Sophia, they're not fragile, just waiting for someone to believe in them? In a world that too quickly labels, dismisses, or walks away, may we be more like Sophia. May we lean in, gently speak softly, and reach out even when it feels scary. Because sometimes the strongest bonds are formed not in perfection, but in the quiet, powerful moment when one broken soul says to another, "I see you, and I'm not leaving."